Well, we live in a fallen world.
Mm-hmm.
In the garden, these animals were not like this. Everyone existed, nobody was eating meat. Everyone was in harmony. There was no death, there was no suffering. But because of the fall of man and the resulting sort of the curse on the whole cosmos, right? There is death, there is suffering, there is resource limitation, there is competition. And the animals, the creatures, become corrupted. How does that resonate? Either with you, or does this kind of like ring a bell, either for you personally, maybe others that you know? That's pretty common, I hear that a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
John Wesley.
Yeah.
Did this exactly.
Yeah.
We looked at his Sermon 60. And
Right. Absolutely.
yeah.
Do you think there's a way to explain like how, or like why animals would also be, and like all of creation would be affected just because humans sinned?
I can't. But the interpretation of was it Genesis 3:16? Is that what it is? Something like that. Right, the curse, right? Curse on the ground, childbearing pangs.
Or, one could try to argue from kind of the idea that that's how deeply interrelated all creatures are, so that human behaviors inevitably, but it's a big step, like that human behaviors could have this kind of, effect on non-human creation in these kinds of ways. Like, it's pretty extreme.
But it also more or less requires a fairly literal interpretation of Genesis too, including like the timeline.
Right.
I think at least most scientists would say death and suffering, that preceded humans by millions of years.
Right.
I mean, that was happening way before humans showed up. So there's some scientific issues with the timing of the historicity of the fall. Some theologians have proposed some sort of fall outside of time and space, some kind of, before the observable universe, there was a fall. So there's different interpretations.
Would that have been
sidestep
associated with the fall of Lucifer or Satan then, kind
No,
of?
I think it's still the fall of man, but I guess they thought like man had more of like an angelic
It's
sort
this
of
kind of
existence,
cosmic thing.
Before sort of.
That's very imaginative, Dr.
Yeah, it's a
Nosal.
stretch too.
Yeah.
So and the other issue for me with that, the idea of the fall, is that the death, the suffering, the competition, the resource limitation, these are all selection pressures, right? These are hardships that drive adaptations, drive camouflage, drive coloring, drive escape behaviors, drive agility.
Right.
And so if we're going to blame the bad animal, the bad behaviors, or the badly behaving animals on the fall, well, we can't just say then all the good stuff is okay, because the beautiful colored birds, the agility of cheetahs, the camouflage of octopuses, all of those resulted from the exact same selection pressures, right? So we can't, you can't really pull those apart, right? The fall would have affected everything in the same way. So I don't know. So for me, at least, it still doesn't quite work for me. And by the way, it's not just like Protestant denominations that would like the idea of the fall. Certainly within Orthodoxy and Catholic traditions too.
Oh, that's, yeah.
I mean, a lot of the saints, their writings talk about the fall. I mean, that is ingrained, right? So I don't know. What do you guys think? I mean, is there anything left? Is there any other sort of model or explanation for explaining these animals, how they got the way they are?
Come on, Pickard.
Why? Why me? No. Why?
Oh yeah, I could say evolution.
I feel like that's a really solid answer.
Yeah, it's a in my opinion, right? I'm a biologist. It's a very solid answer. But how do we sort of square that with our faith, our theology?
Right.
Because we're not, yeah.
The comment was evolution, right, or something like.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Evolution explains these things perfectly, but do we just forget about God then? And, no, right? So we still got to work it out.
It seems like it works nicely with, I guess, with all of them. When you said the cuckoo bird one, that made a lot of sense. That wasp thing still really bugs me. Like,
I know.
So.
Or whatever. Yeah, in the history of that animal's evolution.
Right. How did that?
Random events,
How did
things
that little
happen.
niche happen? Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
You do, Hannah.
Yeah, I guess I'm wrestling with like why is randomness not a valid answer? Like why does there have to be a why?
Okay, good. So let's unpack that a little bit, right? Because a lot of people, the reason they don't like evolution is because it's all random chance, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of how it's put down. It's not, but there is some
Right.
randomness to it.
There is some.
There's some absurdities, right?
Yeah.
So another approach, this is kind of the one that I've been kind of trying to develop, is that these animals, so the first one was like sovereign God, total determinism, the animals are exactly as God intended here and now. The second one with the fall is that...
It was all perfect and beautiful.
Right, so these animals are not as God intended, right? This is not as he intended. So this third one would be something like, these animals are as God intended insofar as he voluntarily created the universe and gave it a kind of freedom to unfold. So the idea is that the creation has a kind of autonomy that is a freedom that is very much dependent on God, on God's grace, but still real.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of an independence of sorts. A lot of us, we think about human free will, right? We can debate whether free will is a real thing or not, but I feel like I have free will, right? I feel like I can choose. And
You could have stayed in your office today rather than coming to see us.
That's right. So a lot, especially when humans behave badly, we don't blame God for that, at least not directly, right? Humans have freedom. God gave us free will.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying is, what if we kind of expand that out to all of creation?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem like it's that big of a jump, and it kind of makes sense, at least to me, like, creation has to be somewhat independent, set like apart from God, right? You've got God as uncreated, so that means that everything that's created, it's got, otherwise if he's just like a puppet master, right, and just pulling levers and things, we're just kind of, I don't know. It doesn't really feel like there's any sort of creation. So what I think might show the most promise is that there's this independence, this autonomy, this freedom of creation that is very much dependent on God, but still real. And so within that, that's where random chance can play, right? And what it means, like, if we rewound the history of time, just all of time and let it replay itself, it may mean that things are a little different. Maybe not, maybe, I don't know, I'm just kind of speculating.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, intelligent, sort of God-recognizing life might not have appeared on this planet at this particular time, but given the size of the universe, the age of the universe, it's kind of inevitable, right? Like it would happen somewhere, right? Over, if you give it enough time. So I don't know. So that's kind of where I think has the most promise, but there's obviously a lot of like, ooh, but what about this? Or what if this? Like, so I don't know. So we can kind of spend the last 15 minutes or so kind of discussing these and kind of like what would the implications of that be? What else do we have to wrestle with?
That's kind of like what